we ready? Is all the tech working? Okay, cool. I'm going to get back to you, I promise. Dre?
Yeah. Quick intro for Gib. This is our Gib's third time back with us. We're thrilled. Thank you so much, Gib, for coming. Gib's got a long career being super successful in different companies, leading product. He spends his winters on the slopes, and he is skiing at this point. And because there's no snow on the ground, he's here with us to share some of his insights, if I'm not mistaken. The one thing that he asks in return, and I want to just stress up front and ask everyone to please try your best to give, let's give 100% response rate. Gib asked that we fill out a survey at the end of the talk in order to help him keep making it better and better. I'm going to drop a link into the meetup comments, but please, if you can, pull out your phone before, like 5 minutes before you leave or before you leave the room. Let's get it filled out. Let's give him 100% response rate in appreciation for the insights he's going to share with us today.
Cool. Thanks a ton, Dre. And there's a cookout afterwards, is that correct? Oh, there won't be rain. What are we worried about? Okay, cool. So I'm here to talk about Netflix. Every time I do this, I have to update it because every month or so, Netflix changes. And then I get very sort of reflective over the last now 10 or 15 years of how Netflix changed. This story it's like a story of beating one's head against a wall, hoping that this idea of personalization works, not really being able to prove it for maybe 10 years or so. So it was like a 10-year leap of faith, never an overnight success, but signals along the way. So I kind of like it because it's just this long grind, and how do you just keep making the service better? So how many of you believe you get good choices, good stuff to watch when you use Netflix? Okay. What's that wavy hand thing mean?
So there's stuff that I like watch on Netflix before, but then I go back to it like a year later and it's not there. And then, for example, like latest shows that I've just recently heard.
Yes. Okay. And what are the things that would make the service better for you guys?
Movies I want to watch.
Yeah. Okay. Well, have you had any great movies you watched or TV series or anything?
So I don't actually have Netflix, but when I do browse it through my wife's account, it's just like we just go to Amazon instead of pay for watching new things because Netflix has great documentaries, comedy specials, and stuff.
Okay. Cool. Cool. Okay. So here's the grind. My background, the key thing is I was at Netflix from 2005 to 2010, which is kind of like 1 million to 20 million people. They recently had a party for 100 million people, which is just sort of mind-boggling to me. Okay, so there's this joke that says this professor at Columbia is asking, what are the 3 best inventions of the world? This first guy says steam engine, the second one says the printing press, and this third guy, who I think was a little drunk, said, the thermos. It keeps the hot things hot and the cold things cold. How does it know? And that's kind of what I feel like personalization has been at Netflix for all this time. This sort of mix of art and science and data and intuition and just kind of wild stuff. So I'm going to tell the story. Did anybody notice this in the last couple of months? What happened? Yeah, so stars became thumbs. Do you think Netflix had tested it and knew that it was a good thing? Yeah, so most of the time you look at it, you know, okay, they tested it with 100 million people worldwide. And so why did they shift from stars to thumbs? Higher response rate. You're correct. They actually got about 30% more ratings in the course of a month because of thumbs. What happened in the last 5 years that Netflix, the king of stars, switched over to thumbs? Facebook created a pattern. Everybody gets it. Thumbs up and thumbs down. So they created this new pattern. And what else happened with Netflix as it went to 100 million folks? It went global. And so these people in other parts of the world. So the thing with 5 stars is you sit there and you're like, is it a 3? Is it a 4? No. Is it a 2? Is it a 3? And then you don't do any rating. And that's the real insight around a 2-star rating. But my point was, even after, you'll see, in the early days we flogged people to get the ratings, damn it. you will give us the ratings. It's a little like you will give me feedback on this talk, okay? And even today, Netflix cares about those ratings, but not so much. Anybody know why they don't care so much about ratings today?
They move from ratings prediction to predicting what you'll watch the most.
Yeah, well, what are the signals that are important to them in understanding your movie taste? Did you go 5 minutes and then quit? That's a really strong implicit signal. Okay, so what is personalization in the context of the work that we do? What are the parts and pieces of it? If you don't know, I'm a teacher. I can wait here forever.
Hey, right here.
Yes.
It's a personalized filtration. So basically, you're looking, instead of having to actively look for the content and spend an hour in front of Netflix, you
Yeah.
can just get everything that's going to be recommended for you.
And so
right away.
10 years from now, what would be the goal state?
It'll just predict what you want to watch immediately.
You will. Turns out, and this one movie is sitting there, and it's just freaking amazing. And that's really what they're trying to do. So I just scraped the Netflix annual report. So this is how they define it. So for each of you, there's a list, 4,000 or 5,000 titles from we think you're going to love it to not so much down at the bottom. And that's an ordered list, and then there's a variety of filters that they're applying to it based on whether you're looking for an action adventure or a comedy, or whether you have a 12-year-old or a 3-year-old in the house. But each of you has that ordered list. And then the question is, what are the inputs to help understand your taste, and what are the best ways to share it, in your site experience or on your phone or whatever else. It's a fair amount of work. You have to make the system work on a zillion different devices. It's got to work across notifications, email, etc. And I promised at the beginning of Netflix it totally sucked, okay? Duct tape and glue. All right, so the reason that we engaged in this leap of faith forever was, you've heard this definition of me. The way I think of my job is to delight you guys, the customers, in hard-to-copy and margin-enhancing ways, in ways that create a business, so we get more money, so we can invest more in content and get it onto more devices and get more original content, all those things that you want. And what's the hard-to-copy stuff about personalization? Any punk startups want to compete?
You have data.
Yeah, how much data do we have?
Terabytes.
Netflix knows, this is unbelievable. Netflix knows the movie taste for 100 million people worldwide. Here's the question. Does it matter what country you live in when it comes to a Hollywood blockbuster movie? Do those people like it equally worldwide, or are there different tastes country to country? What?
Sometimes they like it more.
Did anybody want to take a guess? Netflix knows the answer to this question. Should we handle personalization slightly differently, knowing that you're in France? Should we handle personalization slightly differently, knowing that you're 50 years old, or a man, or a woman, or 13, or you live in a zip code in Burlingame, California? Netflix knows all these things. Every question I'll tell you the answer. So huge amount of data and a huge amount of taste data around 100 million folks. Okay, what else is hard to copy? Content. I think of that more as an economy scale, but yes. Because they have 100 million people, they can spend $200-300 million for episodic TV content that nobody else can. Hulu, is spending 30 to 40 million. What else is hard to copy? Being able to perform at that scale. But man, I love engineers. There's a lot of code and a lot of unique technology that's wickedly hard to copy. It took Hulu 3 years just to do the simple thing of acknowledging that there were 4 people in my household. Okay? It only took us 8 years, 10 years ago. Okay. Oh, and the cool thing on the personalization was, whoa. Was in the beginning, the real marvel of personalization with DVDs was the real insight to help Netflix made money, which was super hard. Very simple algorithm. It costs $3 to get you a disc in the mail that's a new release, back and forth in a day. If a title is a year old, it only costs $2, and if it's 18 months old, it only costs $1. So one of the components of the personalization system understood the cost of a title, and if we thought you would like 2 titles equally, we would give a tiny nudge to the one that was cheaper for us. And that made all the difference between making money and not. What's wrong with that model, by the way? What's bad about it? What's evil?
Serves the company, not the customer.
Yeah. So, Amazon's great about obsessing the customer. That cost-based algorithm was richly debated, and we had to promise Reed that we would always only do it in the event of a tie.
But if you can deliver a long tail at a cheaper price, then you can bid more on the more recent stuff, which could get you more content. So it seems like it's still serving the customer.
Yeah. So the point was, hey, Gib, don't kill yourself. That's not evil, because when you make more money, more margin, I know you will invest in more goodness for the customer, get more original content, get onto the Xbox faster, all those things. In that middle zone of streaming, the real problem, we launched streaming in 2007 with 500 really bad titles, okay? So the personalization was hoping to God that we'd find you 1 or 2 titles in that crappy 500 title library that you might love, and that's what the personalization was about. And then, anybody know what's going on with personalization in the context of original content today? What's the magic there?
Yeah.
Yeah, so in the old days, we would all watch, now I'm going to date myself. Do you remember Three's Company? Like literally bad, lowest common denominator, boob tube, okay? And so Netflix believes that that they can create any manner of content. The question is, how many people will watch it? So all they do is figure out, should we make a $1 million investment, or 10 million, or 100 million, or 1 billion? And they have enough data to make a guess about how many people are going to watch any unique movie or title that they make. So it's way cool. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about what the personalization looks like. I'm going to show how we got there, the messy, dirty path, and then I'm just going to, most of the questions I ask you, I'm going to ask you, and you can use your collective wisdom to see if you're right or wrong, and then I'll reveal the answers. And then I'm going to tell you some tests that they're engaged in right now, and who knows. You will notice that there's a lot of failure in the story. So Netflix developed a very, very thick skin, which was helpful. Okay, so here's what my experience looks like. So the iceberg theory is you see that little experience, and there's a lot of work underneath it. So that's my homepage. You see, I think that might be indie film. I have some independent film tests. You notice the popular on Netflix at the bottom? That's totally bullshit, okay? Which is, that's popular on Netflix for people like me. But if you and I compared notes, we would see radically different popular rows. Anybody know why that is? What? It does perform better. That is the answer. But there's an insight hiding in there we'll get to later.
Well, there's
Go ahead.
Oh, it must be that people want to watch what they think other people want to watch.
Yeah, there's some social proof there.
Yeah.
Yep. And that took us about 7 years to figure out. Okay? In the old days, it said, we think you'll like this because you like strong female heroines. okay? This is, by the way, for Kelsey. This is my daughter. I'm not that into Gilmore Girls. This is Kristen, my wife. We all have very different experiences. Brittany's got kind of the crush on Ashton, so this is her experience. She's my 19-year-old daughter. You can see what the experience is like on a phone. This is what it's like on a tablet. You can see those ordered lists being presented in rows, perpetuating themselves over every frickin' device that exists. Here's a TV-based experience. And then this experience gets replicated on thousands of devices. I get a notification. I actually like an email saying, hey, Gib, the Da Vinci Code's now available. Go ahead. Yep.
How are you kind of measuring the user experience for invisible apps like Google Home or Amazon Echo, where you can control watching Netflix through voice?
So I think you said, how do I measure if we're doing a good job on devices where we don't have the data? Is that what you're asking?
I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so for a lot of them, there's now a server-based UI where they are able to A/B test on top of all these different platforms. And for sure, remember that ordered list? They know if people are clicking on or are watching for each ordered list, irrespective of what platform it's being consumed on. Did you bring up Alexa or Google Voice?
So I watch Netflix through Google Home.
Oh, this is so cool. Okay.
And it's because I can't find my remote control, really.
Yes.
But that's my experience, and so that's why I was wondering.
Yeah, I don't know, but that is so cool. So how does it work for you, Voice? Do you do a lot of search, or what do you say to it to get a movie?
So I'll yell at it because it's in my bathroom, but I'll say, okay, Google, play New Girl on Netflix on my TV, and then it will play New Girl, and then it will go through the seasons.
I see.
But
okay.
So.
Well, that's way cool because what you just described is fundamentally easier than searching using the damn remote on any of those platforms. And is that experience good or bad? That when you say, hey, okay, Google, play Gilmore Girls, does it work?
It totally works, but it doesn't allow me to choose episodes.
I see.
Yeah.
Huh. Yeah. Well, there's going to be a lot of experimentation there in 5 years, and thank you, because you're the future. That's totally awesome. I haven't gotten to that myself. Okay. Notifications. Here's the stuff that the new arrivals of stuff that it thinks that I'll like. And now we're back at my home experience. This is, if I recall, this is original content from Netflix. And you'll notice what's going on here with Netflix in the launching of original content. It's giving very aggressive support to it. Okay, so you see it's occupying 3/4 of the homepage because it believes or thinks or knows that that's going to be something like a 4.5-star experience for me. But you can see how Netflix has been aggressively seeding its original content business. And why are they doing that? What?
Better margins.
Say it again?
Better margins.
Yeah. And who's their competition? So the answer was better margins because they already own it, okay? And then who's their competition now?
Studios. And
Who's the big dog? HBO. So Netflix is trying to out HBO before HBO out Netflix's Netflix. And who's winning? Who would you rather invest in today, HBO or Netflix? Yeah, I'm a little biased, but I would go with Netflix, okay? But this is about supporting great high-margin titles. This one I struggled on. I was really intrigued by the fact that you're searching using voice. So in the very early days of Netflix, we actually thought search was evil on a PC. Like, this is like 2005. Why do you think we thought it was evil? That was exactly it. So the only thing they're doing is searching for expensive, new release titles on search. Turned out that was an incorrect theory. So if you looked at the margin of the titles that people searched, it was about normal. And then we realized that we were creating a horrible experience for customers because our search was bad. so that we started making the baseline investment in it. And you'll see later the world changed why. But for a while we thought search was important. The easy browsing, it's relatively easy on all these devices to scroll through rows of content. And then of course there's just more and more and more support for original content. So has anybody seen Master of None? Okay, cool. And of course we enabled it so you could binge watch. How many tend to watch a whole series in the first weekend that it comes out? Yeah, I know, this is like a guilty pleasure, yeah. Raise your hands high, okay? But that was obviously unique compared to many of the competitors. The only thing I wanted to point out here was if you look carefully, you'll see that this content is known to be quirky, it's witty, and it's for 16-year-olds and above. So where did that data come from? Where does it come from? Yeah, there's 40 people down in LA. It's a great job. Watch movies, tag, okay? Same, there's in Oakland with the Pandora and the Music Genome Project, there's 120 people that are tagging songs. So it knows that Jack Johnson, because I'm old and like surfing music. Are you with me on this? Okay, cool. Acoustic, melody, so there's a tagger that put in like 300 or 400 attributes to describe Jack Johnson's music. And you can binge watch to your heart's desire. Isn't that kind of embarrassing when you get that screen? Are you still watching? Okay? Yeah, yes, I'm still watching. I'm trying to heal my knee. Okay. And then at the end, this is actually kind of a blast from the past, but it'll ask you to rate, and then it'll instantly suggest more titles like it. So you can see some aggressive cross-merchandising, even today. And that whole notion of, has anybody watched Netflix Love? I have. Okay. Is it kind of like Master of None? Same genre? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, why, yes. Is the rest of the development stupid to you? Okay, pretty good. Okay. One of these things may not belong then. I gotcha. Okay, and then I've rated about 2,000, 3,000 movies. And then I watched a lot of stuff as well. So Netflix has got the data on all of us for all of this stuff. And then it's doing it for everybody in my family, which is pretty cool. Okay, so I'm going to talk about how we got there. And this is the slog. So this is the very, very, very sucky Netflix 1999. You smiled. This is just like a delightful screen. You kind of remember it. Okay, so I'll start off suck. Netflix really sucked. I checked on the origin story. So Reed and Mark Randolph went into a music store and they bought an audio CD and they sent it to themselves through the mail and it arrived without breaking. And that gave them the insight that maybe DVDs by mail could work. And that story's true. There's some bullshit ones about late fees and Apollo, which are not true. Okay, this is 2007. So this is actually the Petri dish that I gave to Todd Yellen, who was the product leader for personalization. I said, Todd, you can do anything you want. You can put any tab. You can do whatever you want. And you get the highly coveted fourth tab to the right, okay? It could be words, you could be friends, you could be 5 to the right. So this is the way it worked. And so we were so non-confident and sucky that we wouldn't even try to do recommendations on the homepage. In fact, on the homepage, it was largely about you got the movies back to us, could you please rate them and pick a couple more to get it in your quay. So we're very focused on just the mechanics of helping people to understand the service. But this was the Petri dish. And then this is what it looked like about 2010. So you can see us bravely putting stuff on Angela's very own Netflix homepage. How exciting. And there's 5 titles there, and there were probably 4 rows of titles that went down. So you can see the progression, and you get to stuff like this today. So there was a lot of evolution. The main thing, Drake was joking that, what would Netflix do? So you look at what the results are, and you're like, but by default, it was probably the right thing to do because they must have tested it. But remember, like 1 out of 10 times we were wrong. Anyway, so lots of A/B testing. So I talked about it being a slog. The thinking, way back in 2005 was by 2007 or 2008, we had basically won the fight with Blockbuster, and we were thinking ahead to a day when we would be all streaming, and we were terrified because we would be competing with Amazon and with Google and with Apple and maybe Hulu. It wasn't clear if they were going to be strong. And we were just saying, okay, how are we going to differentiate ourselves? What is the stuff that we're going to do to delight customers in these hard-to-copy, margin-enhancing ways? And we just kept doubling and tripling down on personalization because we believed that might be the answer. And it worked. And the main insight in the early days is that it was essentially making it easier for people to find movies they love. We didn't have much confidence that we were doing a great job in finding great titles, but over time, we got better at that. Okay, so to know me is I'm very disciplined as companies grow, trying to get people focused on sets of strategies and metrics and tactics. So these were the strategies that worked. We had some failed strategies. People here remember Friends, okay? We tried unique movie finding tools. You'd come to the homepage and there'd be personalized previews. That was a failure. You could see some other stuff like, those 7 tabs. We're not selling used DVDs any longer. So these were the 4 things that worked. And so with Todd was always telling me, hey, Gib, these are the tactics I'm working on to move personalization forward. So I'll talk a little bit about an important tactic, one quarter, which is called the Netflix Prize. But these are the tactics against these other theories and hypotheses. That's a nice way to think about the strategies. And then for any of the strategies, we were measuring our success along the way. I think you guys might have guessed at this, but Todd's job, I'll give you a clue. Todd is now the VP of product at Netflix. But the question is, after the first 6 weeks of a customer's life, what percentage of people gave at least 50 ratings? Told us about how much they liked different genres or different movies. Anybody want to guess? I heard a 12%. That is the most youthfully aggressive first guess I've ever heard. So thank you. Congratulations. Other guesses? I'm doing some serious signaling here. What would your number be? 13%. This is not The Price is Right, dude. Other guesses? 2. Okay, so you're my curmudgeon in the room. Todd got it up to like 25 or 28%. So there was a question earlier about whether we flogged people. We did. So it was super important for us to get this explicit taste data from people in order to do some of the experiments around personalization. And later it became less important. So we had metrics for all those other different strategies as well. Okay, and so then as companies get bigger, start with a startup, that's way cool. And then by circa 2007, I had a product leader in each of these swimming lanes, and I just mercilessly divide and conquer. And so we were able to innovate on most of these fronts, but I'm just going to talk about what was happening in specific within personalization. So the way that we thought about it, actually the mission of the company was to connect people with movies that they love. And so the simple way that we thought about it in the beginning is what are all the things that we can know about a person? And then what are all the things that we could know about a movie? And what are the magical ways via presentation layer tactics, via great design, and via algorithms could we connect those two together? And that's largely the way we thought about it for the next 5 to 10 years. And there were more data sources over time. So I have to do a little bit of merchandising 101 here. So the key thing is back in the early days when we were a DVD by mail service, the metric was our ability to inspire you to add a title to your queue. So those were queue ads. Notice way back in 2005, a whopping 2% of the queue ads came from the home page. You know, that's a strong hint about how sucky we were at helping to find people to get movies that they'll love. Half of the people were searching for the titles because we didn't do a very good job of surfacing stuff in a way that they could find it. Genre, that was a big dog, action adventure, and everybody would dig in the dirt until they found the magical genre called new releases, right? That was a big on-ramp for lots of folks. And then you could see a little bit of the baby stuff more like this, you know, on a movie display page. I skipped over something important. Does anybody remember well, we called it the quackle. You would add a title to your queue, and something called the queue ad confirmation would come up, and it would say, we're adding Reservoir Dogs to your queue. Would you like another title like it? And that was our most substantial test bed for personalization in the early days. So now, these are my guesses on what life looks like today, but about half of the queue ads are the plays are coming from the homepage. So progress or not in terms of getting good at helping people to find movies they'll love. You know, I look at that as a substantial trigger that they're moving forward. Only 10% of folks are finding stuff via search, probably via Google Voice, right? Now, we're aided because it's super hard on TV-based system to search. It's probably one of the reasons that search has gone down. And then you can see the quackle's dead. And then now Netflix feels actually quite good about helping you find original content because, as you pointed out, we already own that content. So I always had the merchandising person. The merchandising person, it was their job. They constructed the row-based system. And then the Todd Yellen was the one deciding what titles went into the store shelves. So it was a very nice sort of division of labor between Crystal and Todd. All right, so then this is Todd's essentially, I call it a one-pager. Todd understood that his job was to optimize retention against the cost of doing it. So it's easy, no, actually, you don't want to have a job, your job to be improving retention because there's nothing easy about it. But one way to improve retention, for instance, would be to give you guys a free service. So the balancing act here is you're improving retention in a way that will help build the business. So you could see Todd's proxy metrics. I talked about the first. RMSE. You know what that is. Okay. So Netflix predicts that I'll like Reservoir Dogs 4 stars. I click 4 stars. Awesome. It predicts that I'll like 2 Men and a Baby 5 stars, and I only like it 3 stars. So we got it wrong, and RMSE is the way in aggregate across all members of measuring how close our guess to your movie taste was to your reality. And that was an important metric for many years. Then lower, you can see Todd did work with Crystal to make it easy to add at least 6 titles to your queue in the course of a month. And then as we went into the era of streaming, the metric was what percentage were able to stream at least 15 minutes in the course of a month. So when we launched, that metric was about 5% of our customers were streaming at least 15 minutes in a month. Today, that metric's probably 95%. But these were the proxy metrics that he used to figure out if he was doing a better job.
Why 15 minutes?
I get to ask the questions here. It's all porn. No, the 15 minutes was. The 15 minutes was, if you looked at our episodic TV content, the smallest increment, the shortest episodes were 15 minutes. And we thought if we had delivered at least one episode, we've delivered some value to you. But that was a 2 or 3 month debate. All of these metrics were debated over 3, 6, 9, 12 months, changed over time. It's one instance where I found Netflix to be appropriately slow and thoughtful. It's usually the opposite. All right, so these were Todd's strategies and tactics. So he was aggressive about getting explicit member tastes, getting people's demographic data. He also was trying to do the same in getting implicit taste. In the old days, if there was something called Bob, if you hovered over a title, it would pop up as though you got the back of box. And we viewed that as a signal that you were interested. That's an example of implicit data. We were doing lots of algorithm work, and I'll show you the algorithms. And then different presentation layer tactics. Anybody know what in the room know what Walla Walla is? This is the weird thing. Netflix has got full of designers, data people, product leader, and movie buffs. So if we were in a cocktail party scene in a movie, and you guys are all in the background, and Dre and I are talking, what you're instructed to say is Walla Walla Walla. So just say it for me for a second. Walla. Yeah. Drew! And the Walla Walla effect is if you say anything different from Walla Walla, you get people's attention. So just inserting in the site structure Drew's name would cause him to click on whatever we asked him to do. So this is what it's like to work at a company that focuses on movies. We started to, Cinematch was our magic algorithm. We slowly got not totally sucky, but people would complain about weird things like, hey Gib, you said I'll like Blue's Clues because I like Star Trek. Like this is what happens in Better Living Through Math. So there are a lot of, we call them trust busters. But we got a lot of progress on the ratings wizard, but frankly, people were doing it not to create a better personalized experience, but to be nice to the community. So they were rating to help out each other. So where we were using it as signal that they trusted our personalization, it turned out to be not so much, that P2 greater than equal to 50. But we got a ton of data. So these are the basic structure of the algorithms for like 2005 to 2008 or so. Medicine, that's all the data that we get about a title. The collaborative filtering is the Cinematch, the Better Living Through Math. Dynamic Store was, it turned out to be a super helpful algorithm. We would never share on the site a title that we couldn't get to you the next day in the mail. And that turned out, the biggest driver for retention improvement for like 3 years was our ability to get you the title at the top of your queue in the mail the very next day. And that was the single biggest predictor of retention for us. Search I talked about. And then category interests, we had an experiment. We did the music genome project that our friends at Pandora did. Ours was called Category Interest. We hired the 40 movie taggers. It took us 2 years to demonstrate it was a helpful theory. So that was a new category of algorithms. How many of you remember the Netflix prize? Okay. What do you guys remember about it? Like, what were the results? Did we pay the $1 million? Yeah. Because somebody? Yeah. So you can sort of see what's going on here. Who would name a team Belcore's Pragmatic Chaos?
An engineer.
Or Operations and Solutions and Vandalay United? What's going on there?
Team merges.
Yeah. So about 3 to 5 hours before you submit the button with all the data to prove that your algorithm does a better job than ours, they would realize they were not going to be number one, so they would merge together multiple teams, and they would, in fact, get a better RMSE outcome. And that gave us one of the first insights from the Netflix prize, which is the more algorithms, the better. Right? So that was a substantial learning for us. Anybody read the book Latitude? So Latitude was in the 1800s. How do you, when you're navigating a ship, determine latitude? So there's $1 million prize for that, which was one. It was basically a clock was the answer. It's a cool book. But that was the impetus for that. So we did it. It took 2 years. The first thing we learned is when you came to the site as a new member, we asked you to rate a lot of movies, and you did. It turned out that your memory of all those was a little bit fuzzy compared to your current movie taste. So we learned to weight the most recent movie ratings that you gave us in current time and to discount, to unweight the titles in the back. We learned to combine lots and lots of algorithms. We put the algorithm in place, and it did not improve retention. So it improved RMSE by 10%, but in fact, it didn't cause people to stay the next month. And that's just a signal of how hard it is to improve retention. The key insight later was it was always a combination of algorithm and design that improved the experience at a retention level. We did the category interest, that worked. Pandora looked at all of our results. They thought popularity was bullshit. And then they started putting in popularity, and their retention got better. So we learned from each other. And then in the early days, Todd was just saying, well, I'll do 2 parts of recent ratings, 1 part of old ratings, 2 parts of demographic data, and I'll weight the fact that they live in the New York City area. And that was sort of pepper and salt algorithm testing. And over time, it evolved into essentially machine learning. Okay, and then the world changed with streaming. We were just pigs and shit. We captured all the data that we possibly could. And then within a week, our data warehouse just came to a grinding halt, okay? But for the first time, we had insight about whether people were actually watching our movies. And we learned a bunch of things. That this is when we began to understand that what you guys say about your movie taste is not always true. So many of you love watching Leave My Brains at the Door stuff, but you don't tell people that at cocktail parties. We did learn a lot about that concept of the ordered list that we presented in these rows. And we also learned that context was helpful, that you could serve up a row and say, hey, Gib, we think you'll like this. It got way beyond that. We think you'll like Star Trek because you like Blue's Clues. We think you'll like this version of Batman because you like brainy supervillains. And then, as I said, we got into the world of machine learning. And then this is at a moment in time, there were 400 or 500 algorithm tests in flight, and this is kind of what it looked like. So now I'm going to give you what Netflix is learning, but you're going to have to do some work. So I know the answer to most of these questions. But what's the best language to use for a recommended title on the homepage of the site? That's my first question. What are the words I could use? Popular. Here's a popular title, Gib. What else could I say? Here's a title we'd like to suggest to you. What else could I say? Here's your personalized homepage, Gibson. What else could we say? The top choices for you. Yeah, something like popular. What else could we say?
Nothing.
We could say nothing. So, any guesses about what works or doesn't work when it comes to positioning these personalized ideas? Pictures. No words. People don't read. What were we going to say?
Yeah, I was going to say, don't say anything, just show us.
Why is that?
People don't like being told what to do.
Ooh, okay. People don't like being told what to do. Now, I thought everybody's waiting for this glorious day where the algorithms and machine learnings are going to just totally help us, okay? So the main thing, if you look carefully at Netflix, the idea is just let the good stuff bubble to the top. And there's some cultural issues here, but if you look carefully at Netflix, it's always a very light touch. We suggest. Or the real trick, I've already revealed it to you, here are the popular titles on Netflix. So I had a woman, she's from Netflix, she said, you need to buy more titles from South Korea. Well, why is that? Like, because like there's tons of them on my homepage, and I just love them. But what she didn't recognize was that her homepage was radically different from everyone else, and she was seeing this experience of popular on Netflix, all these South Korean titles. Anyway, so that's been something that Netflix keeps learning again and again. What about the man versus machine? So Stitch Fix, Eric Colson now runs product there. He's really, his job is chief data officer. He does personalization. He can get 300 people to help. What's his mix of engineers versus people who understand style and fashion? Anybody want to guess? How many of the 300, how many are engineers working on algorithms, and how many are trying to bring a human touch to it? 80-20. 80 of what? I don't know, I just feel like that's... Okay. That's a great intuition. Which way do you want to go? Do you want to go more engineers or more stylists? Well, your first instinct was better. Wait, you want 80 engineers, don't you? Because you're an engineer?
I do, but I feel like you need 80 people to do the work of 20.
Okay. He's at 80-20. So he's 80 engineer and 20 on the human. He was at Netflix, so one of his puzzles was, it was his job to guess how big an investment to make in a new episodic series. And occasionally he was off by a factor of 10. It's like, what the hell's going on here? And so he created this magic device where humans could just look at titles on the site and make any observation they wanted. They were not machine-like in their thinking. And so when Eric started to look at where all heck broke loose, one thing he noticed that he always guessed wrong on National Geographic. National Geographic always performed 10 or 100x better. Anybody want to guess why? They had a freaking yellow border box around the box art, okay? Now think about titles with scantily clad people on it. Those perform 10, 100x. And it was the humans that he gave these forecasting devices to who picked up these anomalies. And so he's doing the same thing at Stitch Fix. Stitch Fix, it's a high-wire act. You put 4 or 5 items in the mail for you and hope that you'll love the clothes. That's hard. Are demographics important? So do people in France have different tastes from you guys? I got a nod of yes? You believe so? Should Netflix reflect on the fact that Kelsey is 21 and I am 55? Is that important data? Everybody's nodding their head, and you're all wrong. Okay? So the demographics do not matter in picking movies. It turns out that Hollywood has been in the business of telling universal stories that everybody in the world understands and loves. Think about Disney. Okay? So this is a real shocker. Demographics didn't matter. I spent a year trying to collect demographic data from people. Please, please, please tell me how old you are. Okay? Turned out not to matter. Okay, so the explicit versus implicit. At the beginning of Netflix, how important was explicit? Super important, and today, not so much. I was almost surprised that they shifted over to the thumbs. They did. But if you saw my rating history, I haven't rated a movie in like 12 months. Okay, but you can see there's a ton of streaming data. Privacy, country by country, there's issues here that are different. How people feel about recommendations or suggestions, or these are universally felt things. Guesses? It varies. It does vary. And we, yeah, and this is a big goof, but Netflix tried to launch its international business without putting feet on the street in any of the countries, and they got burned. So then they started putting people on the street in different countries because they missed a lot of basic issues. And some of them were responses, and frankly, it's just regulations, rules, et cetera, and privacy. So our dear friends at Pandora, if you come to the non-member page to sign up for the service, it says, get a personalized radio station. That's how they talk about their service. could Netflix ever talk about the fact that it's a personalized, it's personalized internet TV? Will that ever work with consumers? You think no? Because of the whole suggestion thing? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I tested it on the non-member page in 2005, 7, 9, 10, and it never worked. But maybe someday people will glom that the more data I get about you, the more I can help you find movies you'll love. What's the right level of support for original content? This is a very tricky issue. So we own it. Netflix owns it. Support it to the hilt. What's wrong with that theory?
What do you mean by support?
Be aggressive. Show it first position on homepage. It always gets 2/3. It's always going to be in the top row. It's popular on Netflix, of course. What's wrong with this? Self-serving. So is it obsessing over the customer?
Or just perceived as self-serving.
Okay.
Perception may be
Okay.
worse.
But if you do this to the extreme, what do you end up with?
You don't know if they're good.
No baseline to compare to other titles. Okay. How many titles will you have 5 years from now? Substantially fewer. You might end up with 1,000 or 2,000 titles. You might look like HBO. Whereas Netflix has been playing the selection game for ages. Now, I don't know the answer to this, but maybe they can get even better than HBO at picking and creating content, and maybe 2,000 great things is sufficient for you guys. How would you feel about that? 2,000 titles available on Netflix.
Well, demographics don't matter, so it should be fun.
It could work. Yeah. Okay, so this is a hot debate right now, and they will test their way to some degree. The key variable is how much does a big selection matter today or not. All right, so here's some current tests. The first one is, they're doing a great job. Anybody what's some of the weirdest stuff you've watched the original content? Anybody watch Chelsea Handler? So they're kind of baby testing like live TV, right? Within an hour, they're in 40 languages with Chelsea Handler. Is that her name? Did I get it right? That's a wild experiment. Will they ever do sports? I don't know. Probably not. But original content's big. So Todd's dream is today they look at 40 titles, each 2 seconds each. They spend 80 seconds in order to find a title. And Todd's dream, as one of you put it, is to have one title and you just go. And that's what he's trying to get to. He's experimenting right now with moods. So you show up at the site, and are you in a mood to learn? Are you in the mood to leave your brains at the door? Or are you in the mood to make sure you're current on the latest, greatest version of Silicon Valley? Okay, so you can be a cool kid. This is one of his experiments today. Is it going to work?
Is the detection explicit or implicit?
How would we figure out your mood? You wear a hat. Yeah. Anyways, just think about Todd and Netflix trying to get to that place where there's just one title and you're going to freaking love it.
You'd have to depend on data sets outside of it.
Maybe. Or maybe Netflix knows because of voice that there's 3 or 4 of us in the room and it's a family setting. Or maybe they can tell by my voice what mood I'm in. I don't know. But you can see how Todd's going to spend the next 5 to 10 years of his life. And he's going to fail a lot because that's the way it goes. All right. So this is Netflix today. This is the 100 million party. This is hard, and it was worthwhile. And the main thing I keep coming back, I love Amazon. Anybody remember the Amazon Fire phone? That was like a huge freaking disaster, and they totally got over it. And now Alexa's way cool, right? So they have this amazing propensity to take big bets and experiment and just shrug off these failures, which I love it. Netflix is getting good about that as well. All right, so then if you look around today, Stitch Fix, I talked about Eric. So he's got 20% stylists that are just guessing fashion trends, et cetera. And then he's got 50 different engineers working on 50 different algorithms, each with their own metric. Like, holy moly, okay? And this company is now, it's getting close to $1 billion in revenue. It's been a real surprise, totally awesome. Amazon used to suck at personalization. I think they've been getting better in the last few years. It's super hard for them because they have so many categories and products. The personalization team left and it started a new company, but now they've rehired. And I feel like things are getting simpler and better there. This is our dear friend at Pandora. I assume they A/B tested it, and like people are responding to this word personalized, which blew me away. And this is you. Okay? And I believe you're engaged in a lot of these things. My only advice is make sure your metrics are clear, be cogent about what your strategies are, be patient, and frickin' experiment a lot. Those are the key learnings and insights. And I'm also guessing this is not the only effort. Personalization was one of the 4 key strategies that worked for us. And then, I nicely forgot the 3 or 4 that totally failed. So that's what the world looks like. Okay, personalization is the automatic tailoring of sites and messages to individuals viewing them so that we can feel that somewhere there's a piece of software that loves us for who we are. Okay, wouldn't that be nice? So that's the goal state. So this is what Netflix and Todd are up to. Thank you very much for your time and energy today.